Hello and welcome to the NFL Recap, Sunday Recap podcast for Week 13 on Big Italy 42. He's Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11, talking about another one of those Sundays where we saw, actually this week, the opposite of last week. We saw a bunch of chalk players explode. So you've been one of the magicians that have found the perfect balance between chalk plays and non-chalk plays, then probably did pretty well. And this was a really high-scoring week as well. Starting off with Jets and Giants, and we talked about this game before. Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing well. Both his receivers played well. And, I mean, that trio right there, I don't know how many people had that stack, but it was a hell of a stack this week. Fitzpatrick did well. Brandon Marshall had 12 catches for over 100 yards. Eric Decker had 8 for over 100 yards. And Odell Beckham, that one, I mean, that was a hell of a touchdown once again. The catch wasn't phenomenal. It was just a catch. But, I mean, he ran, 72 yards on that one. I mean, just straight through the defense. So this one was, it was a battle, but quite a bit of performances in this one, though.
Yeah, this was a fun game to watch, I think. And, you look at this Jets offense, and it kind of has that looks that they can do it both ways. They can either run the ball a ton and beat you and play defense, or Fitzpatrick can air it out. And you got to look at Brandon Marshall. I mean, it's one of the most consistent, wide receivers this season, and Eric Decker. And then, with them chasing the game from behind, you saw Powell really come into play here for the first time this season. And he had 13 targets and had an 8 for 91, one line. So it was a solid game from the Jets. I mean, I really like this offense altogether.
Yeah, and you saw Brandon Marshall apparently had some extra motivation here after he said that Colin Jenkins was insulting his wife, whatever that was all about.
Jesus.
So I wouldn't be pissing off a guy like Brandon Marshall who's already playing pretty well. And obviously, whether motivation or not, he certainly did pretty well in that second half there. Cardinals and Rams, this one was kind of what we expected. Cardinals did what they needed to do to win this game comfortably. And David Johnson, huge game. If you were playing for the 100-yard bonus on DK, then that's unfortunate for you with 99 yards. 2 catches, 21 yards, a touchdown, 99 rushing yards. Like you mentioned on here, the bonus would have been nice if you had David Johnson, but also everyone else, at least in cash games, would have also got the bonus. But still, I mean, at his salary, he certainly met and exceeded that really easily.
Oh, yeah, he paid off nicely this week, and we just got to thank Bruce Arians for actually sticking to his words and said he's going to get 20 touches, and he got over that. So I think over the next few weeks, I mean, you got to think his price isn't going to go drastically, especially on DraftKings, who seems to be about 6 weeks behind in pricing. Anyway, so you got to look at Johnson as one of the better value plays going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, of course, on the Rams side, nothing. Move along. You should have already been moving along, but in case you weren't, move along now. Falcons and Bucks here. Devontae Freeman, he was a guy who was okay. I mean, he didn't kill you, but he kind of was another one of those situations where if you paid for him, I mean, you weren't paying him in cash games anyway, but if you paid for him, you got him. You got to your nice floor. You didn't have a huge game there. And then Julio Jones, once again, about 1 billion targets. I think it was 17 targets in this one.
Yep.
But, I mean, a target for Matt Ryan is not the same as a target from a guy like Tom Brady, where he's actually going to get the ball near you. And, I mean, Julio Jones, I'm not saying he's unplayable right now, but the upside just is not there the way that Matt Ryan's been playing.
Yeah, I think if you're comparing kind of those top guys, you got to like Odell Beckham Jr., who's really the only player in that Giants offense who can do anything, and as well as Antonio Brown. I mean, those are the two safest options right now because we've kind of seen Hopkins fall off the map a little bit here lately. So, I mean, Julio Jones, especially over the next 2 weeks where he faces Josh Norman twice, no thanks. But he does face the Saints at least one more time, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, fire him up that one last time there. And Doug Martin continues to have himself a nice season. Another guy who fell just short of that 100-yard bonus. Got in the end zone finally, but I mean, there wasn't a ton in this one. This was a close win for the Buccaneers. Falcons, I mean, the Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, they're pulling their best San Diego Chargers impression right now. Great start, terrible finish, or vice versa. Usually it's backwards for the Chargers, but Chiefs are another team that are doing that, but we'll get to them in a minute. Seahawks and Vikings here. This was a game that, people were saying the Vikings, contenders in the NFC, Seattle trying to remain a contender in the NFC, and based on what we saw in this one, there's only one team of these two that's an actual playoff contender.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle's kind of catching fire here. Obviously, they didn't look great against the Steelers on defense, but they did make timely plays. This week, they looked a lot like their old selves playing Minnesota. And, I mean, they took Adrian Peterson out of the game and tried to make Teddy Bridgewater throw the ball, and that just didn't happen. And Kyle Rudolph was a popular play this week, and for a game that really set up for them trying to come back from behind, saw 4 targets, just catching 3 of them for 13 yards, so he was a disappointment. Overall, just disappointing for the Vikings.
Yeah, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater's kind of been exposed from what we thought was a game manager type to a guy who just, I mean, he doesn't really have the weapons to make plays anyway, but just showing once again that, if this team gets down, they're in big-time trouble. So they're going to need their defense to step up in a big way if they're going to win playoff games. And based on performances like this one, it just doesn't look like that's going to be the case. But either way, I mean, they might by default make the playoffs because the NFC is just so awful right now. But either way, take the points with whoever they're playing the first round, looks like. Texans and Bills next up. Texans defense has been one of the better units over the past month in the NFL. And then all of a sudden this week, if you played the Texans, as someone who did play them on DraftKings, I know they got exactly 0 points. So I'm not sure what their status was on FanDuel, but I thought they were worth a shot in GPPs. But Tyrod Taylor made some huge plays, and Texans defense, I mean, it seemed like every play they made, they're going to the opposite side of the field as J.J. Watt and saying, good luck catching us, and it paid off for the Bills.
Yeah, Bills knew what they were doing coming in. I kind of like the Bills offense just because I know their run game is, Texans run defense isn't great. Their pass defense is really kind of, an area you don't want to target against. But Watkins came out firing this week, had another 100 yards and a touchdown. Charles Clay, first time in a long time we've called his name. And McCoy over 100 yards, but I mean, was only targeted once in the passing game. That was kind of disappointing. I thought he was going to have a solid week. Still over 100 yards, was productive, but didn't have that upside we wanted.
Yeah, guy with a nice high floor still. And we certainly can't move on before we talk about Brian Hoyer. Another great game for him. So give this man his due.
But stop throwing Ryan Griffin, Chris Polk. Come on. I need other guys in the end zone. This is ridiculous.
Yeah. So once we all start chasing the Ryan Griffin red zone target bandwagon, then everything's going to go where it rightfully belongs. But Brian Hoyer cares not about our fantasy teams. He's going to get his touchdowns either way. Yeah. Next up, Ravens and Dolphins. It was ugly. I mean, 15-13. No one should be surprised about that. 2 of the, I guess, worst teams in the NFL. We know Baltimore's one of the worst. Dolphins aren't officially, as far as record, one of the worst, but they've played awful. And we saw Devontae Parker kind of make his appearance here. Second straight week with a big play. Had that great touchdown catch. I mean, that's the kind of catch that you or I make, and we're laying there trying to breathe for the next 10 minutes. But it was a great play.
I can't jump that high.
Yeah, that's true. Unless there's a ladder there, I'm not getting up there anyway. But, this one, not a whole lot to see. We saw, Buck Allen was really the one big guy. Having the kind of game that we all expected and kind of were demanding last week against the Browns. But if you had Buck Allen and you didn't get off the bandwagon after only 12 carries last week, then good for you because he had a huge game this week.
Yeah, as a guy with no real Buck Allen shares, I was a little bit bummed. I mean, he had a decent week last week against Cleveland, but we expected a heavier workload that week, and then this week he finally got that workload. And Matt Schaub doing what he does best, throwing touchdowns to other teams. And apparently only we can play Lamar Miller after one of their coaches gets fired because that's when he really comes alive.
It makes no sense. And moving on to the next game, I'm just going to skip right to the bottom line where it makes sense. The Browns are the Browns, and that's all you really need to know. I mean, this one, it wasn't even Austin Davis's fault. So they're going to put Johnny Manziel back out there apparently for next week, but that just tells you how blind this coaching staff is. I mean, Austin Davis didn't play badly. I mean, he had no time to even, drop back 3 steps to make a throw in that pocket. I mean, he was getting crushed all day long. And, I mean, the Bengals, once again, just dominated the Browns. And it's you feel bad if you're not a Bengals fan. I don't feel bad, but I guess some people feel bad for the Browns. Personally, I'm just doing the laugh, the quiet laugh, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the Browns pretty much give you stacking options across the board. I mean, if you run down the list here, Andy Dalton, 3 touchdowns, one of them being rushing. Jeremy Hill, 98 yards and a touchdown. A.J. Green, 128 and a touchdown. Defense went off. Mike Nugent even hit 3 field goals and 4 extra points. So you could have just played everyone here and, handedly won your head-to-heads with just a Bengals stack.
Yeah, get yourself your nice high floor with whoever's playing verse or at Browns next time. Next up, Jags and Titans, and if you peg this one as the game that was going to go for 81 points, then good for you. If you had big pieces of this game, you were the people that made a lot of money. I had a fewer Allen Robinson shares. In retrospect, obviously, I wish you had more. Monster game, 3 touchdowns there. Blake Bortles had 5 touchdowns. Marcus Mariota, finally, we were waiting for the big run, the long run. He finally did it in this one, and I mean, the shades of his old Oregon dominance, and it was a fun game to watch if you watched it. One of those ones you wouldn't have planned. You sit down and think out your Sunday. You say, cannot miss Jags Titans, but if you miss this game, it's a fun one to rewatch.
Yeah, I mean, Allen Robinson is just, I mean, you got to look at him as being one of the top tier wideouts right now, as far as talent wise. I mean, the guy's just so good. I mean, he's unbelievably good. 10 catches, 153 yards, and 3 touchdowns. And I think the only disappointing part of this game was Julius Thomas. I mean, I had some Thomas shares just because he figured he'd be the number 2 guy there, and did catch a touchdown, but really wasn't looked at a ton. And yardage wise, it was all Delaney Walker on the other side who had the big game as far as tight ends go.
Yeah, and people saying that Allen Robinson is the poor man's Dez Bryant. I would argue that Dez Bryant is the poor man's Allen Robinson, because Allen Robinson has been good and Dez Bryant has not. Plus, Allen Robinson keeps his mouth shut. So I'll take Allen Robinson over Dez Bryant 100 times out of 100. So come at me with your Twitter hate there. Allen Robinson this kid is so good. I love watching him play. And then on the other side of the Titans, I mean, Dorial Green-Beckham, big game. Delaney Walker. Every week he seems to get the volume. It's just whether or not he gets the touchdown. Got the touchdown this week. So as far as your high floor guys, I mean, he makes for just about the best cash game played nearly every single week now. 49ers and Bears. You're not going to enjoy this one, so if you want to just sit out for the next minute and a half, I can recap this one for you.
I'm going to go walk away for a minute. Yeah, you talk about this game.
Yeah, it was, if you had some Cutler Jeffrey, it looked like a great matchup. Cutler, 202 yards, did have 1 touchdown, but Alshon Jeffrey, 12 targets, 4 catches for 85 yards. This looked like the old Bears offense from earlier this season where they couldn't move the ball. Matt Forte did get in the end zone, had a Matt Forte type of game, 84 rushing yards, 39 receiving yards, got in the end zone, and it was an impressive short run to get in the end zone. But I'll tell you what, the other thing here is Blaine Gabbert plays on the ground, plays through the air. I mean, all of a sudden, Blaine Gabbert looks like a serviceable, cheap quarterback. So I'm not saying he's the guy that's going to be their new franchise quarterback or anything like I saw Twitter overreacting to, but he's played well. I mean, he's played like the guy who's out there trying to win games, and give the guy credit. I mean, he came out of nowhere, a guy who hadn't played in a couple of years, and including myself, I was very low on him, but he's playing well. I'll give him some credit now.
Yeah, those rushing yards and that score really added up, helped him, surpass his value there. Just wrap up this one. Jay Cutler is the worst, the absolute worst.
Yeah, and Sean Drawn, we should talk about him. He had himself a nice, great PPR game once again there.
Yeah, very consistent.
Yeah. Broncos and Chargers, this one, kind of what we thought it would be. It was get the lead, keep the lead, dominate on defense, as the Broncos have done against just about everyone this year. Not a whole lot to see here. Demaryius Thomas scored a touchdown. That's it. The defense scored a touchdown. Move on. I mean, that was about it. Phillip Rivers, that offensive line is a mess, especially against the best defense in football. So if you had big shares of this one, that sucks. Too bad. I mean, it was ugly.
Yeah, Dontrell Inman left the game early, so they really have 0 options for Rivers to throw to outside of Gates and Green and Woodhead. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, it's not a pretty situation in San Diego. Maybe that number 1 pick that seems imminent now, maybe they can draft themselves 4 or 5 offensive linemen with that pick and see how that goes. Next up, Chiefs and Raiders. This was a game. It looked like the Raiders were going to compete. They had a chance to win, and then they blew it late. Jeremy Maclin, once again. It feels weird saying that Alex Smith is producing with wide receivers all of a sudden, but that was the key. I mean, and we were talking earlier about a Chargers-type season, bunch of losses, bunch of wins. Now the Chiefs had 5 straight losses, 6 straight wins. All of a sudden with, the rest of this AFC picture kind of muddled up, you got the Chiefs now in a playoff spot, and I personally hope they hold on over the Steelers, but either way, the Chiefs look like a good team. I mean, not just a team that could make the playoffs. They look like a team that could actually make some noise too.
Yeah, I mean, that defense is making plays. You got to look at the offense. I mean, the points per game right now is just unbelievable. It's over 30, and I believe since they went to London and put that spanking on the Lions. But I mean, Colossus, our lineup optimizer, had Alex Smith as a cash game QB for FanDuel, and I was like, I was kind of surprised about it, but he paid off. But what the hell do I know? I play Jay Cutler, so I can't really say anything.
Yeah. Next up, we had a guy who the team scores 35 points against the Patriots. You think, wow, Sam Bradford must have had himself a nice game. No, Sam Bradford did not have himself a nice game. But the Eagles made all the plays in all the ways you wouldn't have expected them to. Punt return for a touchdown by Darren Sproles. Another defensive touchdown as well. And Tom Brady throwing a pick, 100 yards by Malcolm Jenkins there, repping his Buckeyes. But this was a game that, Broncos fans, Bengals fans, all were kind of hoping for a miracle, and there was almost two miracles. One was the fact that the Eagles were actually up by 21 points. The other one being that the Patriots recovered an onside kick, almost come back from 3 touchdowns down in the fourth, but fall short. So let the excuses flow quickly from Patriots fans in this one. You can't be losing to the Eagles if you're going to be trying to get home field advantage.
Yeah, I mean, this is one I enjoyed just because I'm not a Pats fan by any means.
Guilty.
And yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch, but it also was fun watching Amendola throw a 36-yard pass to Tom Brady, who pretty much outscored receiving yards from the entire Philly team and tied Jordan Matthews. So that should just tell you everything you need to know about the upside of the Eagles passing game right there when Brady's really outscoring your wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wasn't Brady's fault. So all credit to Brady still. I mean, 4 touchdowns, one of them rushing, as he does. Probably the best quarterback sneaker we've ever seen in the history of the NFL. But I did see a great tweet this morning. I'll have to find who sent it, but it said Dwayne Bowe receiving yards this season 31,
yeah.
Tom Brady 36. So I'll find that and shoot that credit over to whoever that was. But that was an awesome tweet. That was the tweet of the morning here. Next up, Panthers and Saints, and much like everyone, including Vegas, expected, this one was going to be a shootout. Vegas kind of thought the Panthers would win a little bit more handily, but obviously expected some points here. And this is the real weakness of this Panthers team, is that the defense at times can give up, big points. And 41-38 going up here. I mean, it was kind of a typical Panthers game, as you see. I mean, not quite the 5 touchdown passes by Cam Newton, but he's been doing this seemingly every week when he needs to. Jonathan Stewart did exactly what he does. 20 carries, 82 yards, got a touchdown. Really, nobody on the Saints had huge totals. I mean, Brandon Cooks had over 100 yards, but this one was just kind of next guy to make the play. We saw Ted Ginn make plays and then screw up a couple other plays as well.
Yeah, Cooks was the big guy. Ingram had a touchdown, but really hasn't shown the upside, even though he's been probably the most efficient Saints player this season. But just, I mean, the upside, the touches just aren't there this year. Panthers, I thought the Saints would be, trailing for most of the game, so I think game flow really helped out Cam Newton. I thought we were going to see maybe a little bit of a Hoyer effect from last week, where things are a little bit, they take their foot off the gas in the second half. But I mean, we just need to have a website of who plays the Saints next, and then that's just who you play. It just shoots out a lineup, and there you go. You're all set for all the money.
Yeah, I mean, early in the second half, it did look like Cam Newton was going to be kind of a letdown there a little bit, but definitely ended up paying off by the end in a big-time way. And then next up, Colts-Steelers. Steelers tried really early to give the Colts a nice head start because they knew they were going to score a ton of points. And Matt Hasselbeck made sure that the Colts did not score very many points on those 2 possessions. So much to the chagrin of Colts fans and Andrew Luck and everyone else, I thought this would be a fun game to watch with tons of fantasy output, and half of that was right. Steelers, everyone got in on the action for the Steelers, and we see D'Angelo Williams with a monster game, no touchdowns. We've seen that a lot with him, where he gets, the small yardage games, 3 touchdowns, big yardage games, and they say, all right, step aside, let these other guys get in the end zone. But
yeah,
that Steelers offense, I mean, looks terrifying, and the defense looked good, but I think it was more of a result of the Colts offense looking back. I mean, Matt Hasselbeck from the very first snap just did not look right in this game, and you kind of could tell it was going to be a long night for him in this one.
Yeah, and then now we could have Charlie Whitehurst under center for next week if Hasselbeck isn't healthy to go. So they play the Jags, probably not a team. Probably just avoid the Colts altogether next week because they have no real options without any quarterback. Hurry up, Andrew Luck. You're our only hope.
Yeah, and I mean, fortunately with that terrible division, we definitely still have a chance making the playoffs. But Yeah, Charlie Whitehurst, you're going down 7 years there from Matt Hasselbeck down to Charlie Whitehurst. So I actually haven't seen. I turned that game off by the end, so I actually haven't seen Charlie Whitehurst recently. But is he still rocking the Jesus haircut?
Oh, it's still there.
Oh,
yeah.
Hell yeah, that's incredible. I'll watch the Colts next week just to see that haircut. The opposite of the Matt Hasselbeck haircut. But either way, yeah, that game fun early, by the ends, just a complete beating, and it was an ugly one. But either way, that'll wrap things up here for us for the Week 13 recap. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got lots of other great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.